Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Maths Week 2018. You'll see on your control panel that there's a section called questions. Please do log any questions or comments in there as we go through, and we will do our very best to answer as many as we can as we go along, and also to pick them up again at the end. So, welcome to our launch event, our webinar. My name's Ruth Perry. I'm Policy Officer here at Natspec, and Maths Week is very much my baby. I'm joined today by Lisa Featherstone, one of our associates, who many of you probably know already. Lisa's supported Maths Week from the very start and is one of its biggest advocates. I don't know if you want to say a quick hello there, Lisa.
Hello from me.
Okay, we're now in our 4th year of running a Maths Week at Natspec, and it's definitely becoming a highlight of the Natspec calendar. We know from past years that it encourages teachers and students to really think about the maths skills they're developing. It helps people explore new practice and exchange ideas, but above all, it's become associated with having fun, and I hope that's going to continue this year. Once again, we've partnered with the charity National Numeracy. I don't know if you're familiar with National Numeracy already, but it's a charity committed to helping raise low levels of numeracy among both adults and children and young people, and to promoting the importance of everyday math skills. If you haven't come across them already, I would recommend checking out their website and signing up for a very useful free newsletter that they'll then circulate via email to you. So what exactly is Maths Week? Well, we see it as a series of opportunities. Initially, it's about putting a spotlight on maths, really focusing in on math skills. We got so engrossed, I think, in embedding math skills that sometimes they almost disappear out of sight. And of course, embedding is great practice in terms of teaching and learning. But we like to use Maths Week as an opportunity to positively draw attention to the math skills that our young people are developing and using all of the time. We also know that it can be a really challenging area of the curriculum, particularly for students with learning difficulties and disabilities. Many of those learners lack confidence when it comes to maths. And actually, of course, we know some teachers do too. And Maths Week allows us to tackle some of those tricky issues together. Hopefully, that leads us to developing more of a community of practice around maths, where we can exchange ideas, swap effective practice, and generally encourage one another to keep at it, even when the going gets tough. It's also a chance for us to remind ourselves, and more importantly, remind our students, that maths really does matter. It's not just a school subject or a college subject, definitely not just a form of exquisite torture, but a set of skills that help us navigate through life and engage in it more fully, whether that's at work or in our personal or family lives. And as I said above, it's also a chance to make maths fun, whether that's through teachers swapping maths jokes on Twitter, you know who you are, having a go at a competition, making videos, or whatever else you decide to get up to. Above all, we see it as a real celebration of maths for young people with learning difficulties and disabilities. I'm going to hand over here to Lisa to give you a quick reminder of what happened last year. Hopefully that will give you a flavour of the sort of things that you might explore with your students this year.
Thanks Ruth. I hope you weren't referring to me about maths jokes. Yes, I will put some on Twitter. This is the 4th Maths Week. 4th year that we've done Maths Week that Natspec have run, and last year we looked at maths in games, and in the competition one of the winning entries was from colleague Lydia. I think this is an image, and they did a race to the farm, so they didn't only create the game and all the rules, but they actually built it as well, which was great. And I think we've got some more photos, haven't we?
Yes, let's move us along.
We had lots and lots of really, I mean, one thing that has become clear every year with Maths Week is how innovative and creative our teaching support and staff, and of course the students are. And I think on these we can see, I think the young man with the blocks was St John's, and I think this is Blackburn College on the right hand side. All the students created their own maths game. So there was a real range of abilities and types of maths being used. And I think we've one more, haven't we? And if we look at these, I think Henshaw's looked at maths for the less able students, so ones that possibly wouldn't necessarily be going to full employment. We think about this year's theme, but would definitely look at different maths skills. So we're looking at colours and shapes, and then of course I think Wargrave House at the bottom one, they looked at using money, which of course are all things that can be used in this year's theme.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We've had a couple of queries in the question panels as to why you're muted. It's because there's so many of you, which is marvellous. If we had everybody unmuted, it affects the delivery of the webinar in terms of it potentially crashing, but also so that people aren't speaking kind of across one another. But please do keep using that question pane. Lisa and I are both keeping an eye on it, and we will pick up questions, points that you're making as we go along. So why the Work It Out theme this year? Well, last year, as you saw there, was all about fun and games with a focus on maths for leisure. We decided this year to switch to a completely different focus and look at maths for work. There's three key messages here that sit behind our choice of Work It Out. Firstly, maths skills are vital for work. They're not just something that sits in a classroom to be, to feel, something that you're being forced to do for no particular reason. We think this will help learners understand the importance and relevance of maths. Secondly, many students who think they're rubbish at maths actually often aren't. They just don't always see that some of the practical skills that they apply in work-related activity are actually maths. So their confidence can be boosted if they can make this link. Interestingly, not all teachers make that connection either. We sometimes do have people ask, but is that really maths? Well, yes, it absolutely is. At Natspec, finally, we are absolutely committed to helping get more young people with disabilities into work. And we see improving their maths skills as one important strand in this mission. So whether you decide to enter your students for the Maths Week competition or not, and we really hope you will, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, we would really encourage you to put a focus on maths in and for the workplace in this week and share what you're doing with other people. Lisa's now going to give you some examples of how you might get lots of different people involved in this.
Very much like the very first Maths Week we did, which was about visible maths. We'd like perhaps that you may be able to get everyone within your college or school or training centre involved, because colleges and all those other places are also places of work. So what maths do they use in their job roles? The principal, the teacher, the giant bus driver in there, the terrifying looking secretary, and we've got some nice, a very, very smart looking doctor there in the corner. So how do they use maths in their jobs? How could they share that information with your students? Students might think about interviewing some staff, and students doing their own job analysis and then comparing it with what the staff come up with. They could make a checklist, maths at work skills, and asking staff which of these do they use, how often, when, and why. And whatever ideas you happen to come up with, those are just a quick thoughts that Ruth and I had.
Okay. The other thing that I'd really like to draw your attention to is the in and for the workplace aspect of our Maths Week. because we want the week to be relevant for all students with a learning difficulty or disability. And that's why we're talking about both in and for work. So it's not just about those who are already accessing the workplace. We would encourage you to think very broadly about the different kinds of contexts that your students might be using or developing their math skills. There's some examples up there on the screen. And when it comes to the competition, more of which in a moment, we are interested in any activity, wherever it may be happening, so long as the focus is on developing the kind of math skills that will be useful at work. For example, it could be something you're working on at college, ready for a work placement. It might be related to an enterprise project or some kind of vocational activity. There may even be skills that learners are currently focused on because they're useful in building their independence, but in the future, however far off that might be, could also be useful for work. We're now going to have a look in a bit more detail at some of the math skills that might be relevant to the workplace, and Lisa's going to kick off with number.
So these the there we go, we're back.
Too fast.
These are the obvious things that people initially think about with math skills. So number is an easy one. You can always point out numbers, but there's lots of other things as well. Shopping, obviously, but also celebrations of birthdays, as we've got an image there. Money skills would obviously come under here, and obviously using calculators and understanding different ways that number can be used. So for example, we've got a 50% sign there, and in the logo you will notice that the in the logo for Natspec Work It Out, we've got a degree sign. In the Men at Work sign there, we've got number for perhaps in a vocational situation, students have to order the bikes and count them in. Similarly, setting tables, and there's lots and lots of vocational situations. So we're talking about counting, calculations, recognition, estimating, writing numbers, and sorting and recognising them. So there's lots of ideas there. So Ruth, are you going to do?
I'm going to have a look at measure, shape and space here. It's really easy when we think about measure, shape and space to see, measures just about centimetres and metres, shape, triangles and squares, and space. Well, what's that all about? But actually, this is a really rich area when it comes to maths for the workplace. Obviously, shape covers the names of shapes, recognition of those, dimensions, comparisons, bigger, smaller, lighter, heavier, sides, sizes, matching, pairing, odd one out, sorting. Measure includes length, width, height, capacity, weight, time, money, quantity. Space, positional vocabulary, relationships between objects. The images on the screen there, just some of the ideas in which you might tackle some of those. Clearly, many jobs will involve handling money in some way. Time will also be important, whether that's setting a timer in a kitchen, understanding a task sequence, your first, next, then, or recognising sell-by dates when you're involved in stock control. Learners might be sorting objects by size, shape, colour. For example, when tidying up sports equipment, they may need to get the size 6'4" footballs out for the mini kickers session, rather than the size 8 that they'll use for the youth team. I added the bag of groceries in as a way of covering heavy and light. You put your heavy stuff down at the bottom, your lighter stuff on top. But colleagues have already said to me, actually, this is also about capacity. Is your bag full or empty? It's sorting by characteristic. Fruit to the top, fresh things to the top, or as the other colleague suggested, things I want to eat on the bus on the way home to the top. Following instructions at work clearly is a very common thing in the workplace, particularly when you're learning your job, when you're on work placement or as an intern. And matching a picture card to an actual object is one way of doing that. So that's what the picture of the rake is doing up there. can you get me a rake from the shed? You take the picture card, you have a look for the rake. Actually make that 3 rakes. In fact, bring the biggest ones you can find. All of that's maths, of course. So the maths in the workplace is so multifaceted. It's such a rich way of learning about maths. That's why we want to put the focus on it here and make the most of those opportunities. Lisa, I'm going to hand over to you for a bit of data handling.
Some of you, or possibly none of you, may remember the very first Maths Week. We did a competition, we did a survey of favourite pizza flavours, and we had fantastic results actually, and then we actually gave everybody who wanted to take part back the data, and the competition was to represent that data in the most innovative or useful way or whatever. So that's an obvious way of data, but there's lots of other things where data is being used. You can use it for sequences, to processes, numbered lists, yes or no checks. For one of the questions early on before we started was things about remembering. And so first, next, then you can also look at matching and categorizing objects. So you may well not think of sorting washing in your colours, darks and whites if you look at that image at the top right, but actually it's a type of sorting of data. Data isn't just numbers. Data can be stuff and things. Just as that first maths competition demonstrated, we had graphs created out of garden centre plants, we had graphs created out of people, and we had pizza graphs created out of pizza, would you believe? So there's images, there's graphs. If you think about a timesheet, that's an obvious way where you are adding your own data, which you can then use to agree that you've done the right amount of work or the right correct number of hours or whatever. So it's a crucial skill, the use of data, and you can combine all these 3 different ideas in a way that's relevant for your students. Okay, Ruth.
Thank you. Just a little bit to add on why we put the timesheet in there. As Lisa said, it's an obvious sort of data collection tool, but it's also a reminder that what some of our young people struggle with about work is the admin associated with being in work. So doing those timesheets, understanding how you apply for annual leave, knowing how you log in and log out, clock in, clock out. So do think about all those parts of working life as well as actually the maths involved in doing the job itself. Okay. So one of the big things that we try to promote during Maths Week is the sharing of what you're doing, the things you're getting up to, but also questions you have for one another. What is a good way of doing this? So as Lisa just said, we had one right at the start. How do you cope with limited knowledge retention? Poor working memory is a massive issue in maths. What are the visual prompts that you might use? How do you use repetitive practice without it being dull and boring to help sort of solidify understanding of what can feel like quite abstract concepts? We'd encourage you to tweet as much as possible using the hashtag Natspec Work It Out. If you don't already follow Natspec, please think about doing that as well. We're just at Natspec. We'll be busy retweeting, and obviously it'd be great if you could do some retweeting yourself. We'll be using the hashtag Natspec Work It Out. So if you do put stuff on Twitter, please do use that hashtag. That will enable us to quickly see everything that's going up relating to Maths Week and retweet it. We know some students have student accounts. Please do encourage them. It's not just about the teachers, it's very much about the learners as well. And get your pictures up on information up on your own websites or Facebook pages, link to them from Twitter. We'd love to put some short blogs or vlogs up on our own website, but it's also about partnering with other people outside of Natspec. Are there other colleges in your local area who you might like to work with together? Is it a way of bringing departments together within your own college to work collectively on maths? And the big push this year we'd like to see is actually inviting employers to get involved. So if you are able to engage your employers in any way, we'd love to hear about it. They may not always realise it, but they're actually maths educators for our students as much as we are, and it would be good to see them taking an active part and being acknowledged in that way. So, competition time. It's a really open brief this year. We want to allow your students to showcase their math skills for work in any way they like. So all we're asking them to do is capture those skills either through a short video or a set of photos with some explanatory notes. Please feel free to use that slide if it's useful to you, or adapt it in any way to share that mission, that brief with your students. In terms of what we're looking for from you as the tutors, please make sure the videos aren't more than around 3 minutes long. Otherwise, that's an awful lot for us to go through viewing. They don't have to be top quality. We're happy if you film them on a phone or a tablet, but this is a particular plea from Lisa. If you are using a handheld device like that, please do hold it steady, or we'll be suffering from severe motion sickness by the time we've finished the shortlisting. Photographs could come in any format, a PowerPoint, Word, PDF document, just with a few words that explain what's going on. You'll see there's the link to the Maths Week page on our website where there's an online entry form to complete, and you can upload your video and document there as well. We've come a long way since the start of our first Maths Weeks, when we really struggled to accept all the different types of evidence you were putting forward. I'm assured it's all very simple and easy, but if you do have any problems, then obviously get in touch. And this year we've allowed a full 2 weeks after the end of Maths Week, so 5 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of March, to get your competition entry in. Last year I think we asked for them right at the end of the week, and some people really did scramble to get them in. But hopefully that will give you a bit more time to edit your video, chat with the students about what they want to include, and so on. So I'm going to hand over to Lisa again to talk you through exactly what we're looking for. Lisa and I'll be doing the shortlisting, so this is what we'll be looking out for.
So just to echo, yes, please try and keep the phone or whatever still, and how lovely it's going to be just taking them all straight off the Natspec website this year. So we want to see students actively engaged and doing it for themselves, and showing math skills that are relevant to them for when they do the sort of vocational work that they are interested in doing. We really would like to see students aware of the maths that they are developing and how they can use them at work. One of the winning entries from a couple of years ago, where the competition was to measure something with a non-standard measurement, there was a young man from, I think, Seychelles, who walked across the hall and counted his steps, and then he walked again with his walker, and he used a lot fewer steps using his walker, so he understood that he took longer steps. So that's a very basic but fantastic. He really showed his understanding of the maths there. So we want to see students just not only doing it, but being aware of what they're doing. And then finally, that last piece, obviously, that they are enjoying it as well. So if you go back to the shopping bag that Ruth mentioned earlier, if they can say that they're putting the heavy items at the bottom, and on the top they're putting the crisps, because that's what they're going to eat in the bus on the way home. I hadn't thought of that one, thanks Ruth. But that's another way of showing that they know that what they're doing is in fact maths, and they're ordering things, and being aware of how maths is part of what they're doing. Okay, Ruth.
Okay, and if I'll just a little bit in bold there at the bottom, please capture the student voice as much as possible. Yeah. It is our mission in all our work to be listening to learners as much as possible. So please give students the opportunity to voice the video where appropriate, to take the decisions about what they want to include, who they want to work with, and so on. We'd like to see the students very much in the driving seat.
Can I just add as well? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. If you don't want to do a video, if video gets a bit complicated, you could always use a single image and you get the students to talk over it and say what it is they're doing and why it's relevant. And there's a number of apps you can use for that, which we can let you know if you're interested. Or you could just add an audio track to a PowerPoint presentation. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a full-blown video. Sorry, Ruth.
No, thank you. It really links to this next screen here. Really, so long as you are working in the spirit of Maths Week, offering us some evidence of students actively engaged, enjoying developing relevant math skills for the workplace, we don't mind how you do it. So can you submit multiple entries? Yes, one college can submit 10, 15 if they wanted to. Although we encourage group work, if a student wants to enter on their own, that's absolutely fine. If it's a combination of video, photographic evidence, a set of stills with a sound recording, absolutely fine. We'd love to see some testimonials from employers. And can you enter students who are currently a very long way from being ready for employment? That was a question that's been put to us when we first advertised the competition. Absolutely, yes. You remember I mentioned earlier that students may be developing skills that are very much about increasing their independence at the moment, but they're a similar set of skills that would be useful in the workplace should they end up in employment. So by all means, yes. So really, it's about the rules are there to give a little bit of structure to what we're doing, but really they're about enabling rather than restricting. As I said, so long as it's in the spirit of Maths Week, then absolutely go ahead. So all of the shortlisted entrants will receive a certificate. Last year, I think we shortlisted 5 or 6, Lisa?
I think it was, yes. I remember it being quite hard.
It was very tricky. We had a huge amount of entries, which was really exciting, really rewarding. We made for much more work than we'd anticipated, but it was great fun to do. We're lucky we leave the really tricky part to national numeracy. We don't have to make that final decision about a winner. Last year, national numeracy decided that there were joint winners. So it's pretty flexible about exactly how that turns out in the end. And last year we did return some feedback to all the competition entrants who took part. Okay. Yeah. And if you're coming to Natspec conference in April, we will be announcing winners there. And we also have a short celebration there of everything that's been achieved across the week. So I guess it's time to wish you well with it all. We hope we've fired you up to make the most of Maths Week in your setting and that you'll get involved in some way. If you belong to other networks and think there are other colleagues out there with students who'd like to take part, please do send them our way. The student needs to be over 16 to have a learning difficulty or disability, not necessarily an EHC plan by any means, but is in receipt of some kind of learning support, then they're absolutely in scope. All the information that we've shared with you today is on the website. There'll be a recording of this webinar if you want to send a colleague to it. It'll be up there on this page of the website shortly. And please spread the word far and wide. Is there anything you wanted to say before we finish?
No, but just to reiterate, it would be great if we could get some information, something from employers as well. And also, if your organisation is also part of other social networks, so I'm thinking particularly Instagram, which seems to have become very to the fore these days, that's fine. But please let us know if you have posted something up there. I will check the hashtag on a number of things, but Ruth and I tend to sort of police the hashtag over Maths Week, but we could miss it, so please let us know if you're going to put it somewhere different.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't see any further questions at the moment, but feel free to contact Natspec if you use the Rita, or in fact you can use info@natspec.org.uk if you've got any particular questions, but I think you'll find most of the answers you might to questions you might have already up there on our website. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing what you and your students get up to. Happy Maths Week.
Thanks, Ruth.
Bye.
Bye.